Hey everybody, welcome back to Hunt Hard Talk Free, hosted by Corlane Sporting Goods, and this episode is brought to you by Ballistics Custom Turrets, the most affordable, most precise, and best laser engraved turret on the market for your long range shooting needs. On this episode, I've got a guest that you could say I know fairly well.
Yeah, for sure.
This is Roman Nelson, and I'll let you jump in and just, if you want to get into how we know each other.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me here first. I seen you guys had posted and said you wanted to have people tell hunting stories just outdoors, and I thought, well, I've got a few good ones.
You got a little bit of outdoor experience.
Yeah. My mother, she worked at the high school, and that's how I knew you, but also because I've been coming to Corlane's since I was a child. Like, it was always the place to go for, like, that was our hunting store, right? And my dad went to school with Tim and Rod, and so it's a small town. We know each other.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I've known who your family is the majority of my life, growing up in the store, seeing you guys coming and going. But then, 15 years ago is when I really met your mom through work, when I was teaching there, and she was working there as well, and kind of got hanging out with both your parents. And then, of course, then you and your brother got to know you guys better as well, just through the connections.
Yeah.
But aside from working with your mom and always sharing hunting stories, because both your parents are avid outdoor people. Hunting, fishing, just outdoor lifestyle. Your mom's horseback. Well, both your parents big into horses, and if you name it, they're doing it, and they've been doing it since you guys were knee high to a grasshopper.
Well, yeah.
Taking you into the back country, snowmobiling in minus 30-degree weather in Silver Sands, like the stories that both your parents were telling me.
Yeah, that was interesting for sure. I mean, it you know what though, it's so relative, because I grew up that way. I didn't really think too much about it, I guess. Like, it was kind of that's what you did. Yeah. We had to get out of there. If we didn't have enough food for another 3 days, like, we probably, we would have been okay, but it was getting dicey. And it could have gotten colder. Well,
let's talk about that. Well, let's start with tell me a story. How old were you?
When I would have been probably about 8 years old at that point. Maybe 9, because I started riding my own snowmobile in there when I was 9. So we had an old 340 Yamaha Ovation. And so I was probably 8 or something like that. And we went into Silver Sands. My dad was working for Horst Minderman, who owned the outfit that had those cabins, the 5 cabins. And at that point, they were being utilized, so they were in great shape. Randy Bedell was in there. They packed horses in there every year. And you could still hunt grizzlies, and of course that was like giant moose, and and caribou. You still could hunt caribou in some of those regions. Things like that. So it was a lush, and it was a playground. It was beautiful. So we'd go in the winter during winter break for school. We snowmobile in. We'd 2-3 families in there. We'd all stay in the cabins. We'd snowmobile every day, ride around, getting pulled around on sleighs, asking our parents, bugging them to death. They're like, pull us again, And it was great. And but the one year when we were in there, it got cold. Like, cold I've never seen since. Like, cold enough where it was freezing rum outside. And we had a gauge, and it said minus 60.
Wow.
And I believe it, because it was so bitterly cold that snowmobiles would not run.
So when you went in, it would have been minus 20, minus 15?
Not even.
Oh, okay.
No, it was probably minus 5, 10. Like, it was temperate. Like, you start getting up higher, it's actually usually pretty nice. And you drop into that nice valley where the cabins are. It would get a little colder, but most of the time it was nothing.
Yeah.
Compared to that. And, when you're a kid, you notice we're in there a little longer than normal. Like, we were supposed to go back this day. Well, we can't because it's too cold. We can't get the snowmobiles running. Well, we don't have any other way of heating them up either.
No.
So my dad, my Uncle Walt, Randy, they're all trying to get the machines going, trying what they can. They can't, but it was also too cold to ride out for kids.
Yep.
And so
you'd be freezing your fingers, you'd be freezing your cheeks.
Yeah, and it's not a short ride in there. It takes...
No, it's...
the new sleds you can mock in there in probably half an hour.
But the cabins, would they be 20, 25K?
Oh, at least. Yeah, for sure.
I've been in there quite a few times. I've never paid attention to how many K.
And you wind through the trees.
Yep.
And then it's starting, you cross a few creeks, and I mean, it's awesome riding. So by the end of it, everybody, I could tell, you could see the tension, like, with my dad and Randy and everybody, where it was like, hey, we're in a situation now. We're like, we got to get out of here.
Minus 60, food's running out.
cabin full of little kids. All we're getting bored. Everybody's getting stir crazy.
Yeah.
I remember they went outside with the 12 gauge and just fired shots off just to kill some time, and who could shoot the defender with a slug in it, and, kind of thing. And so finally it was starting to warm up. I think it got to about minus 40, and now it's like, oh, it's t-shirt weather. So there was some hot water used, and they built a box. And they filled it full of sleeping bags and put all the littlest kids in there.
How many kids are we talking?
Well, it would have been my brother, 6 kids in there probably.
Oh, wow.
And this is being pulled by a 1980-something Everest snowmobile, like a 503 fan.
Yeah.
The wide track, 16 wide. And so we start going out of there, and I'm riding with my mom on a Formula 500 snowmobile, same engine, 503. And I'm cold. Too, like we can tell, and like the machines are starting to knock, like twin cylinder, all of a sudden one carb would start to freeze off, and it was just blah, it would sound like a tundra, and you're trying to climb up out of the trees.
Yep.
We made it out, and the kids were all thought it was great because they were warm inside the
bundled up in sleeping bag boxes.
We got back, and I just remember, the trucks wouldn't start for a bit, but Silver Sands Lodge was open then still.
Yeah.
So we all went in there and had some lunch, and the guy helped us, and we had tarps and Herman Nelsons and stuff like that, get the trucks going, and got out of there. But I think about it now, there was no, I'm sure you could have got I think there were sat phones then.
Yep.
But nobody had anything like that.
No, they weren't cheap.
And they didn't work most of the time either.
Yeah, batteries did.
Batteries, and they signal like it just. Yeah. So that was a really fun experience, but now I think, if I was taking my kids in there, I don't know if I could. I would love to, and I'm going to.
Yeah.
But that would always hang heavy in my mind. Like when we gotta go, we gotta go.
Yeah, for sure.
It was great. And I haven't been back there. And the cabins, obviously, they stopped guiding out of there, so they start dilapidating things like that.
I was in there 2 seasons ago.
Yeah.
And they're getting pretty run down.
Yeah,
it would take a crew of guys to fly in for a week to kind of
the one
fix
year
them right up.
We flew in there we snowmobiled in, and we get up to the cabin, and you can just see stuff everywhere, and the doors ripped off. Grizzly had gotten in the cabin, and this was in December, so he was still. Like, I don't know when he would have done it. It would have been like they must have got a lot of snow because it wasn't a huge amount of time in between.
Yeah.
But he tore that cabin up. There wasn't really much in there for food, but he went and he bit every single utensil in there. Forks, knives, spoons. He went in the back, laid on an old mattress, took a big dump in there, just absolutely obliterated the inside, and left.
Wow.
So we had a big cleanup, and then of course the doors open, so Martin got in there, and he liked to leave his treats everywhere too.
Yeah.
So got the cabins all cleaned out, but just seeing that, like how this wasn't the way he ripped the door off. It looked like he probably just went like this and just peeled it off.
Yeah.
And because it wasn't a small door, it was designed to keep bears out.
Yeah.
And then, so.
What are your thoughts on being, like, you spent a lot of time in the outdoors, whether it's back there, whether it's in the Peace region?
Yeah.
And do you see lots of grizzly bears?
Yes and no. Seeing them is one of those things because you don't see them much. You see their sign a lot.
Yeah.
Around here, like growing up in Puggins Mountain, we'd always see grizzly tracks in the spring in certain areas, but it was kind of like they're moving from where they were denning, probably down in the creeks, and then moving up in a little higher elevation, like up into the Puggins, and then heading back towards the Colebrook and basically the Murray, right?
Yeah.
So we didn't see them a lot, but I definitely started seeing more closer to home, and I'm sure logging and industry has some things to do with it. It's going to stir them up, but at the same time, there's just a lot of feed for them too, and they're doing well. And what competes with a grizzly bear?
Nothing.
Absolutely
nothing.
I have definitely seen more the last few years, and I'm talking about the last 10. And it even kind of coincides with in 2007 when we got that, because I bought an 03 Summit, and I was riding October 15th in the pastures in Groundbridge, and there was 3.5 feet of snow.
Yep.
And that year, so many moose died. They just got hammered. And it seemed like that's when the wolf population took off, and grizzlies definitely started doing better. and then they shut the season down.
Yep.
And it's not like they had a lot of tags they ever gave out anyway.
Nope.
And it's not like you just go out and find a grizzly. It wasn't that easy. Like,
Nope.
not a lot of tags were ever really getting filled.
Nope.
You know, so I started seeing more, and the strangest thing is that I was working for a company in Tom's Lake, and I'd seen 1 year 6 grizzlies, and they were all different bears hanging around in farmland.
Yep.
You know, eating oats, things like that. The one grizzly I saw, I seen his tracks a few times up and down the road, and you know, when I put both my like this in this front pad,
Yeah.
and just turned in,
bear.
he was big,
Yeah.
and where he was sinking in the mud, and I'm not a light fellow, and I was jumping with my foot, and I couldn't come close to sinking in to where he was. I did end up seeing him, and he was an absolute tank. He was huge, like, and beautiful, just giant dark chocolate, and he stood up, and he was walking down the road, and he stood up, and it looked like, you know, when you see a gorilla,
Oh yeah.
because of the way he stood up, and I was just, his
Yeah.
head's, you know, like, just huge.
Yeah.
But I never saw him again. I'd seen some adolescent ones, like probably 3-4 that were booted from their mom.
Yep.
There was a pair that were hanging out together, and then there was a sow with 3 cubs, and there was another lone one that was a really light colored.
Yep.
And I really liked seeing them, but at the same time, you almost think about black bears kind of just the part of the natural. You got deer, you got moose, elk, you got black bears, and then you got grizzlies.
They're the apex.
Yeah.
The apex predator that'll go in and kill off every
And
black bear in the
I
area.
understand ranchers having issues because they had been having issues with, you know, you're losing a few more calves. I know out in Puggins area, someone had like 20 sheep just destroyed by a grizzly bear, and they saw him one night do it. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and
Tom's Lake, they're bad too.
and yeah, oh yeah, they're taking out a lot of critters, and so it puts a lot of these ranchers in a really sticky situation because it's not like these guys want to go out and just whack bears. Like,
No.
that's not the case.
Nope.
But when it's your livelihood, and it's always that balance where it's like, someone was telling me the other day on the Ministry of Forests or something website that there's no grizzlies in this area around Dawson Creek, like this chunk of the piece. There's none. And I thought, that's a pretty poor thing to put on your website, because that's not true. You know, it's just people not, if you don't see one, they don't exist. Well, that's not the case. So I want grizzlies to be here because they're incredible animals. They're part of the environment. They need to be here to keep the balance. But when they start doing too well in an area, or they're moving into farmland, that's a big problem, because these bears if you go from Tom's Lake, it's all nothing but bush all the way to Tumbler.
Yep.
They don't have to be there. It's just easier. So they do learn to come in, and then that causes a problem. And unfortunately, even like for our conservation officers, we don't have enough to actually patrol and help people with things like that.
No.
You know, there's like 3 to patrol a giant
For the whole
area.
Yeah.
And how do they keep up? And it's, I know that there is illegal activities that go on, and people make mistakes, and that happens too, but just the general, like, trapping bears, relocating bears, they've shown with grizzlies that you can't even relocate them because they'll come right back.
Yep.
They can smell so well,
Yeah.
and they've got to know where they're at. Like, they must know something else, or they can feel something.
And if they've slaughtered a whole farm of sheep, they now have a taste for it. That was an easy meal. That was a fattening meal. That was great.
Easy.
They're stuck in a pen.
Yeah. And sheep are dumb. Like, there's not like they know we've bred them to be that way. We want them to be docile.
Yep.
We want them for a thing. We've done that to cows, like cattle.
Yep.
It's the same thing. So they're kind of just sitting there like fish in a barrel, really. You know, sheep in a pen. So it's definitely. I've seen more grizzlies, and I've definitely seen more in the areas that I hunt the last, I would say, 5 years. And I'm not talking about like seeing some smaller, like, mature bears, big bears.
Yep.
And I've had some run-ins with black bears, and I had one really close call, and it was all my fault. I can talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
This is kind of what wanted me to come in here too. And I lived in Chetwynd. I was in an area where you couldn't hunt with a rifle, but you can hunt with a bow. And I thought, well, it's great. Maybe something will come through here. One night, my wife says, there's a big black bear in the backyard. I'm like, oh? And I'm thinking, everybody sees a black bear. They're like, that's a big black bear. Bears are so incredibly hard to judge.
Yeah.
I find, like, you got to have reference somehow, because everyone sees a black bear because they're just so black, and you're like, oh, and you're like, oh no, it's not even as big as me.
That's a 5.5 footer.
But I look out the window and I'm like, oh boy, this is a 7 foot plus bear. This is a big, and this is in the spring. He's rutted, like you can tell, he's the king of the ring. He's rutted right up. And so I grab my bow and I'm like, this is amazing. I'm going to get this bear like 30 yards in my backyard.
In your yard.
Yeah, perfect. So he's in the backyard and he kind of, there's a trail that followed the fence line. And so I came outside of my house and went around and stood by my deck. And it was perfect. It was 30 yards right to this trail and he was walking up it. So I'm like, he's going to walk right into this window. I'm going to whistle at him, do something, or he'll stop. He knows I'm there.
Yep.
And I'm going to send an arrow and it'll be done. And he's walking up and I can see him and he kind of hangs up a bit and he's just kind of standing there. And I had a predator call. And I'd never used one on black bears. I've called in coyotes before. And so I hit that predator call. You can see him. He hears it. Doesn't care though. Takes another couple steps. And I hadn't drawn my bow at this point because I couldn't shoot. He was right, like a bunch of brush right in the way. But 2 more steps, he's right in this window about this big.
Yeah.
And so I'm ready to pull back my bow. He takes another step. And as I'm about to draw, he looks at me and his ears peel forward. And I just saw this intense look. And at that same, like it seemed like it took forever for this to all happen. This is happening very fast.
Yep.
But
everything slowed down.
He just started coming. He just at me. And I dropped my bow because at that point it's fucking useless. I'm not gonna and just drop them and get up to my feet.
Yeah.
So I drop the bow and I grab my railing. I spin around and I open the door and get in the house. Slam the door, and I look out the door and he's on the porch and he's swinging his head back and forth, and he is mad. And my wife is screaming at the top of her lungs, he was going to kill you, he was chasing you. And I'm like, I fucking know, I know. So I'm freaking out now because I'm like, this was not a bluff charge.
Right.
I've been bluff charged by dumb 2-year-olds.
Yep.
I've been, and I've had them get mad and pop their teeth. And, I had a sow go up a tree beside me once I didn't know was there. And she's woofing and popping her teeth. But she's scared when they're doing that.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I felt with that. Was like, she doesn't want me there. And so I backed away. This bear didn't make a sound. It was just cocked his ears forward and just, you could see him dialed in on me. And I'm trying to, I'm opening up my cabinet. I'm wanting to grab my shotgun because at this point I'm like, bow season or not, this
is now
he's going to kill me. Like he could hurt someone else.
Yeah.
He's not scared of people at all. And fumbling around, and by the time I got my shotgun out, then I'm trying to get my other cabinet open and get my ammo out. And the bear took off back to the yard. He was gone.
Yeah.
I calmed down and I'm like, well, I'm not going to go after him because this is dangerous. I'm by myself. I went to the neighbors, told them like, hey, there's a big black bear. He just chased me into my house. Watch your dogs. Like, be aware, he's here. So for the next 2 months, that bear would come back and he would just do subtle, and bears are pretty smart, but he'd do some really weird things. He got in the box of my wife's truck and you could see that he laid in there, rolled around, put his feet up on the top of the cab, stood up, big muddy prints, got out. He put big muddy paw prints all over this Malibu car I had one night. You could see where he would bed down next to the house. You'd see where he would sleep there. Like it was, this was freaking me out because I'm like, this bear has got like a vendetta for me, or like he wants a piece. I never did see him again. And when we were moving, because we ended up moving to Dawson, this was not long after, and we had a big apple tree. And I was always good about pulling the apples off, and because I didn't want him around.
Right.
And I came home one day and that bugger broke that whole tree. He just absolutely obliterated it, broke every limb off it, and had a feast. And I was just like, good riddance. Like we moved him. We're out of here.
You moved away and the bear stayed.
Yeah, he won that.
He kicked you out.
Oh yeah, no, he did. That was that gave me a whole new respect for black bears that I definitely can say that I didn't have before, because I'd seen so many and I'd stalked them. Like I've hunted them many times. I've only ever shot 3.
Yep.
I could have, at this point in my license, I could have shot over 40 if I filled 2 tags a year.
Yeah.
But I'm always looking for a really big one that's got some character. Everyone wants a huge cinnamon bear. but it's just one of those things. And so I've stalked up within bow range many times. I was hunting elk with my mom, and I seen we're walking along, and all of a sudden a black bear cub just comes trotting down this little kind of a side game trail. And I'm like, hey, and he stops, and he takes off, and I thought, I'm going to go see where he's going. So I followed him.
All the way back to his mother.
Yeah, and I watched, and I could see the sow, and she was about 40 yards, and she caught wind, and she looked and saw me, and just gone. Like, they're gone, like a shot.
Yeah.
So I started feeling pretty ballsy, where it was like, well, black bears do charge people, they do attack people, it does happen. I've got my rifle, or I've got this, and I've got the experience. And after that happened, I understood really well that, like, you really don't know. You can understand a certain amount of behavior, you think. You can watch bears, and you can see when they're acting aggressive, or they're scared, or whatever. But it made a whole new respect, where it's like, you think you've got it under control until it's not under control.
Yeah.
Because even if I would have had a rifle, the amount of time that had happened, I would have not gotten a shot off.
Yep.
I would have had to have been drawn and ready.
And that's the same thing that both Robbie Austin, who was in here for one of our first podcasts, and Jeremy both said. And Jeremy is a big supporter of using bear spray and having bear spray close, because he's like, he would not have been able to raise a gun at that grizzly that chewed him up. And Robbie did raise his gun up, and he got one shot off, he thinks, into her, and a second shot off at arm's length, stretched out as she's coming at him, as he's pushing away and pulled the trigger. Doesn't know if he hit her. Yeah. But had bear spray been accessible, and that was what Jeremy said, is bear spray is always attached to his chest. So if one arm's down the throat of a bear, the other one can pop that bear spray off and spray it. And he's like, if I get sprayed in the face, I don't care. But it takes out two senses. Yeah. Where a gun does not. Like, if you hit the bear in the face or directly in the heart, you may pile it up.
You might fold it for sure.
What are the chances? Right?
Nil. Yeah. Everything's your Davy Crockett. You're going to split your bullet and kill a cougar and a bear on each side. I think everybody, and I shouldn't say everybody. It's, you get too comfortable thinking because you've got a firearm that's and actually that's really interesting you say that, because I've been hearing that more and more. I love Steve Ranella.
Yep.
Because to me he's the only legitimate guy. No, I shouldn't say the only, but one of the most legitimate guys that goes out and hunts, because he shows his failures too, and he talks about when he makes poor shots. Yep. He talks about, they show them processing. They talk about eating it, how to eat it.
Yep. It's a realistic look at what hunting actually is. It's not 100%. Look at me, I'm the great white hunter out killing animals because I'm the hero.
Well, you get, like on the Outdoor Channel, you get sick of, these guys that are sitting there in their blinds and they're like, oh yeah, here comes some big bugs, and the corn feeder starts spinning on the side. And that's fine. That's nothing wrong with that, for sure.
Yeah.
But you get kind of, I think that's where people come into hunting sometimes thinking, well, that's what it's going to be like. I'm just going to go shoot something. And whenever somebody new, I find, that wants to get into hunting, they say, well, I want to go out and shoot something. And I said, well, first, let's start a little bit back from there.
Yeah.
It's not, the whole point of it's not to go out and shoot something.
Nope.
Like, it's that
harvesting.
is, like, that's what we're trying to do. Like, let's not pretend.
Yep.
But I'm not out there to kill something in the sense that, like, I don't get any kind of thrill from killing something. Right. I never have.
Yeah.
I don't feel like, anytime I've ever come up to an animal and looked at it, I feel bad that I shot this thing that was a magnificent creature, way better than being in the bush than I'll ever be.
Yep.
And I just killed it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm just like, but this is how I live. And so I harvest it.
Feed my family.
I've always put my hand on it and said, thanks, man. Like,
yep.
Good on you. And then the work begins, of course.
Oh, for sure.
But that's all part of it that I like it, because you never stop learning how you skin something different next time, or you're in a horrible spot, and it's all part of the hunt. But
and I will say, and I mean that's a great point, that I'm exactly in the same boat. I do have customers and people I know that are they love hunting and harvesting animals.
Yeah.
They like to kill animals.
Yeah.
There's an excitement for them. For me, I've had a couple, what I'd call, for me, epic hunts in my lifetime, and one of them was actually with your father.
Yeah.
He took me into a spot when I
was telling me about that, and I was like, whew, that's a good one.
Harvested an elk 3 seasons ago.
Yeah.
And won't get into all the nuts and bolts of it, but you go into the backcountry, you hike 6-8 kilometers up and down mountains, and to get into an area, and then to be able to bugle in and have 7 different bulls calling back.
That's wild.
There's elk
Yeah.
all over the place, just loud bugling and lining up as I'm calling one in straight towards me down a trail. And as I'm lining up I even set my phone up and it's recording just to hear all the sounds, but it's recording me, nothing else. There's no great footage out of it or anything.
It's tough.
And your dad's actually cow calling behind me, and a bull's coming at us. And as I'm looking this way, straight in front, about 7 yards to my right, a bull pops his head out, a different bull through the trees, and just looks at me. And he's not looking at me; he's looking around.
And I'm like, his breath, yeah.
And I kind of look with my eyes. I don't turn my head, and it's like a 3x4 bull.
Yeah.
And so I finally turn just a little bit, and he catches the movement of me moving, and he bucks up and he disappears, but the other bull's still coming in straight on. Like it was one of the coolest experiences, and so within that weekend when I did harvest that bull, there was excitement. There was I have the same remorse or sadness for I took a life.
Yeah.
No matter how you look at it, you took a life, right?
Yeah.
And it is a big, majestic creature that's however old, it's outsmarted whoever else or whatever else.
Wolves and grizzly bears and 40 to minus 40, like, you know.
And to me, the excitement and satisfaction comes from knowing that what percentage of it is luck.
Yeah.
But I was capable of outsmarting, outdoing an elk in its own habitat. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And so, and again, if it wasn't for your dad, for his skills, for his knowledge of the area, I wouldn't have harvested one that day. He took me into an area that I haven't I've gone back in with him once since then.
Right.
But again, boiling that skull out, mounting it on the wall, until I really got into hunting, I was like, trophies on the wall, I get it. Not really my thing, but until the experience occurs, you put that up. Every time I look up at that skull, it's that trip, and it brings me right back to it. And so, I mean, we then had to hike out and called Lee.
Got the horses,
and Lee brought the horses in. And so, I mean, what an epic day!
Yeah.
Going in, hiking, harvesting an animal, coming out. The COs just happened to be right by our trucks when we came out, and we're covered in blood, and we had fully processed the game, put it in the bags, and it was cooling while we waited for Lee to show up with the horses, and then we horsebacked in and out and stuff. Like, it was just an amazing day. Pulled the trigger at 9 a.m, got back with the horses and the game at 7:30 that evening. Like, it was a full day adventure. It was awesome. And so, I mean, there's excitement, but there is remorse, and there's such a roller coaster of emotions.
It is.
And every hunt is different.
Yeah.
I've never had the same experience.
It's heavy. It's heavy. It really is. And that's where I think with a lot of people, I don't discourage people from hunting. I think it's natural. We all want to hunt. We all want to we're animals. We want to be animals, you know?
Yeah.
But I really encourage people to, you should go with somebody first.
Yep.
You don't need to pull the trigger to feel excited about hunting. And if that's the only exciting part, maybe you shouldn't be hunting. Maybe you should just be shooting at targets. Like, you know what I mean? It's so I do say, like, come out and see it, because I'll tell you what, you can watch somebody that you think, they hold themselves at pretty high regard. They're pretty tough. And you start pulling the guts out of a moose, and that smell, all that blood hits you, and all that. It's an overpowering smell. It's still every time I'm just like, oh, jeez. You get in there.
Heavy copper smell and taste.
Yeah, you can taste it almost.
Yep.
And that turns people green real quick, especially if it's a bad shot.
If the guts are punctured, now you got that.
Yeah, and then you're trying to get it out of there as quick as you can, and blood's pouring all over you, and all those things. But I think for a lot of people, start with small game.
Yep.
If you can go out and you can shoot a rough grouse, and take it apart and eat it and do everything with that, and you're still okay with that after you've killed it, pulled its guts out, got covered in its blood, prepared it and ate it, and that still tastes good, and that's a great thing, then you can be a hunter. You know what I mean? I think you should be, because, a lot of people, I actually, somebody I know was talking about, can I get some elk meat from you? I'm like, well, yeah, sure, I got some left. And I said, do you ever think about going out hunting? And like, no, I wasn't raised that way. And I'm like, hold on, what do you mean? What does that mean? Well, I just wouldn't go out and kill something. I said, well, you eat meat, though. Yeah. And I said, so you're okay with someone else killing it, right?
You hire a contract killer to do the dirty work.
I'm like, well, I said, and that's fine. but it's you don't. That's not how you say it.
Yeah.
But I was raised like that. I'm a brutal killer, and that makes me inherently bad, or you're better than me. And it's like I had to see all the heaviness of everything that went on, from pulling the trigger to, you know, my dad told me, if you ever stop shaking when you see something, and stop, because then it's not exciting anymore. Then what are you doing?
Yep.
I still get that same, like the elk I got last year was an amazing hunt, because I dialed in my rifle. I got some work done to it here. I had to get the scope moved back. I had to get a Picatinny. Is that how you say it?
Picatinny.
Yep. Picatinny. Yep. I never know if I'm saying it right. Put on it so I could move my scope back, because it was just a little far forward, and it's a Savage, so it's got that giant action that's 3 feet long on it. And calling, and it was in an area we'd gone before, and it was kind of set up similar. I'd shot an elk kind of the same way before. Called, and you could hear him act, that. I love when you hear the very distinct drop and high, but this was like a ooh, just like that. And if you could very easily be like, well, what the heck was that? But knowing from being and hunting enough, you're like, no, that was an elk for sure. We get down, and there's a fence line, an old fence line, and elk seem to really like barriers. They really like things like that, because they won't cross it. They would never cross that, calling them. But if you got in there to the pocket where they were at, they would come up to it. They'd never cross. Okay. It was just a natural, not natural, but a barrier for them kind of. So I got lined up, and we did some more calling, and then you could hear them kind of going back and forth, and like, it could be a spike ball. You never know, right? But probably not. And then I get lined up. I'm on a poplar tree, and I'm like, Dad, I'm like, hey, I'm going to go back and do our thing. Yeah. And I'm waiting, and all of a sudden I see him. He comes trotting down this trail. I'm like, oh, there he is. And I'm looking at my binoculars. I'm like, oh, yeah, he's a 5x5. Perfect. So I get my 338, and I'm lined up, and I'm watching him, and he keeps coming, and he stops at about 120 yards. And I'm like, oh, he's going to bust me. And he's facing. And you could tell he kind of looked over this way, looked back this way, and Dad's still calling. He can't see what's going on. He was interested, but then he looked again, and I'm like, oh, he's gonna go.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to take the shot, and I thought, I'm like, I don't want to shoot face on, because there's a lot that can go wrong.
Yeah.
There. It's a good shot if it's a good shot, I guess, right?
Yeah, I've harvested one. It was a little 3x3 bull. Yeah. And it was at 25 yards.
Yeah.
And I lucked out, because I went in through the brisket.
Yeah.
And it actually deflected and went up. And so it went heart, lung, spine. But
can't ask for a better shot than that.
A little to the left or to the right, and now it's missing the vitals.
You blow their shoulder off.
Yeah.
And they can run on 3 legs faster than any person can ever run. But I lined up on him, and I felt this, and maybe it's just getting older. I felt this really big wave of calm all of a sudden, and I'm like, no, I can make this shot. And I lined up and pulled the trigger, and you could just hear it whack. And he lurched back and went 20 feet and just hit the dirt.
Yeah.
And my dad comes running out, and how excited my dad gets. And he's like, I didn't even hear the shot. He said, all I heard was the sound of that bullet hitting that bull.
Yeah.
And we went and found him, and it was just such a, it's still, every time, it's the same from when I was 15 years old shooting my first elk with my dad to now. I still pick him up off the ground and hug him. It's it's the same thing, but I can't wait to take my kids out and have that with them. But at the same time, I'm like, maybe my kids won't want to hunt either. Maybe it's not their thing, and that's fine. But I have a hard time thinking that that's the case, because they're already asking me about chicken hunting. So I'm like, well, we got to wait. But it's.
I still have extremely fond memories of fall when I was, I don't know, between 5 and 10 years old.
Yeah.
And my dad was working away at camp, and Mom would take us after school or after she got off work, and we'd just jump in her little 2-wheel drive car and go drive up into Bear Mountain Wednesday, Thursday, Friday evening. Yeah. And we'd limit out. We'd get 10 grouse.
Oh, it's easy.
And so she would, whether she harvested them or she would let us harvest them, and we got to take turns. And
it's great.
We'd get out and we'd get 10 grouse in an evening.
Yeah.
And then Carmen and I would fight on who got to step on the wings and pull the feed.
Yeah, that's everybody wants to do that.
Here I am, the little redneck kid going to school the next day, pulling the little tendon in the leg. Look at this is what I brought for show and tell. It's a grouse leg that you're. Woo.
Yeah.
Rest kids, I don't know what they thought, but.
And I think around here, most kids probably have seen it. Like it's similar
lifestyles,
kind of thing. Like I still love chicken hunting.
Yeah,
I still think it's great.
Yeah, going for a walk with the 22 or 410.
Yeah, it's still awesome because they're a little forgiving.
Yeah,
they're not the smartest thing. Well, everything's got to eat something, right? Can't be. But it's still a blast, and it's good for kids to see all that. And when I was a kid, like the same thing, we'd go out and we'd set a limit. So my brother and I were allowed to shoot 4 each.
Yep.
Because we could have both got a limit, if we wanted, but there was just no point because we just wanted to eat those and because we could go out the next night.
Yeah.
There seemed like there were so many, and we'd always go to different spots. We never go to the same spot.
Right.
You do a rotation, so you're not just wiping out all the birds in one spot or whatever.
You don't take the whole covey.
That's right. So we had this old orange cat who was a stray in town, and we'd got him, and thing was a beast. He loved eating chicken. Like we'd pull him apart, and he was like a dog. You'd throw him chunks, and he'd eat the heart. He'd eat whatever, the guts. He'd chew the feathers. He was a savage. Yeah, he just loved it, and he'd come with us on our property. He'd walk with us chicken hunting.
Yep.
And I shot one once with my 22, and I just broke its back, and it kind of like fell down like this. And it was flapping its wing, and that cat went peeling past me and jumped on its back and grabbed it and just started kicking with his back legs and throwing feathers out.
Like a lion.
Yeah.
I also remember a trip with my dad that a little bit later in life, but he would take me out and we'd be going moose hunting or elk hunting. Mainly moose. That was kind of his thing, to chase moose back then. Because again, there were a lot more moose and less elk back then.
Oh, for sure there was.
And so we'd go chase moose. But we'd bring the 22s as well.
Oh, yeah.
And so, I mean, they were mainly, we'll call them chicken hunts with the possible moose here or there.
But you always bring a rifle because you might see a moose.
Just in case, yeah. And so we're down Puggins area. Yeah. And he'd back me up. We'd get out. We'd go walk up on the chickens. I think he had just given me my 10-22, so I would have been 15 or so. And so semi-auto. Yeah. And he had his trusty old Cooey that was just deadly. Yeah. Little 4-power Leopold or something on it. I got this 10-22 with open sights, and there was one we lined up on, and it had jumped on a tree that was overhanging the ditch, so it was like a perfect silhouetted target. We're both lined up, and we actually both pulled the trigger at the exact same time, and it was a perfect head. Like when we went up and picked it up off the ground, there was a hole through and through its head. Wow. Did you get it? Did I? And he let me believe that I took
that you got it.
Yeah. It was probably the old Cooey heavy barrel that was just precise and deadly. But again, I remember that whole event as if it happened yesterday. Yeah. So, I mean, the amount of memories that I've got as a kid that, again, I hope to do the same thing with my kids if the rules and laws allow us to do it in another 5-10 years.
Yeah, that's such a, the regulations are there for a reason. I'm not going to argue that. But who's writing them sometimes? Like with this moose season. I'm not opposed to giving the moose a rest. But what in my mind, what should have happened was that any bull season that was open, they should have closed that 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And that would have made a big difference. And everyone still would have got moose, I think. Like you could have had, and maybe you change the antler restrictions or you have a little window still for any bull, but I don't know. Or it was a draw. Like it seemed like their numbers got down in that any bull season. Some years you'd see, like, you could tell it was like, there's no moose here now.
Right.
Like they've all been shot. And I mean, I can't say that I don't go out and hunt too.
Yeah.
What they've done now is like, you get the draw, great. There's still antler restriction.
Yeah.
How stupid is that?
Yeah.
So what? So now you're going to have guys whacking illegal bulls, really wanting to leave them now. Yep. Before people might take the chance. You don't want a moose to go to waste. Like at least call the CO and say, moose are incredibly hard to identify. I find to count points on a moose is tough.
Oh, yeah, because you're not 10 feet from them. No. And you're trying to look at brow tines or 10 points overall on one side. Or 10 points. And when you're looking at one side, is it taller than it is wide? Have they been rounded off? Have they been, like, there's so many things that come in there. Mature bull likely is
not going to have nice points up top. He's probably going to only have 8.
Yeah. And that's where I'd kind of... debate you on the fact that I'm okay with any bull for the fact that there are massive bulls that'll never have 3 brow tine because it's not in their genetics.
Right.
And I've seen some beautiful big bulls that aren't 10 points or 3 brow tines, so they'll never be able to harvest them. So then those genetics get passed on. So I would say there should be, like you say, the regulations are in place for a reason. I don't want to see our resources get depleted, them to be overhunted. But when that came in, it had nothing to do with moose. It had to do with politics.
It did. That's exactly.
And that's where I have a problem with it. Because if you want to look at cutting back on the hunt of a species, the first thing you should do is do a count. And a count is close, right? The government did not do that. A rough idea.
Yeah, they helicopter, they try
fly
to...
around, see what they see. Yeah. And I mean, we need science-based information. We need to be making decisions based off science.
Yes.
And so if you go out, you do some random counts for specific areas, then you have your multiplier. Okay, we saw this many, but we know that should be a 2.4 times multiplier, so there's probably this many in that area.
There's actually that many.
And you've done a few random flights to do those counts, then, I mean, it all costs money.
Oh, yeah.
And we pay for it.
Yeah.
But at least then you have some data to make your decision that, you know what, I want to say, well, I will say, the Wild Sheep Society did a count after the moose closure occurred, and they figured, and don't quote me on these numbers because I don't have them in front of me, there's between, let's say, 65 to 75,000 moose in BC.
Oh, I believe that.
And
for sure.
And what was reported the previous year for being harvested was less than 3%.
Yeah.
And they said the numbers that we could be harvesting to sustain and grow the population was like 10 to 15% or something. So we were way below where we could be to continue to allow the population to grow.
For sure.
So it's I say it's absolute BS that they completely shut it down and just went to, and they said, okay, so it was 3,500 moose were harvested, let's say, or whatever the number was.
In the province of British Columbia.
Correct.
Yes.
They cut that number in half, and that's how many tags they allotted in the LEH for the following year. So 1,200, 1,300, whatever it ends up being, 1,500, 16. That's all the tags.
Yeah.
So
not everyone's gonna know.
And a lot of people won't fill those
tags because now, and this is, and it's interesting you talk about with the 2-point thing. So this is where I think like Alberta's lottery system where you get your draw, you go out and shoot a bull moose. I agree with that.
Yep.
I think because what we've done in this area is we've now destroyed those genetics because you could only shoot a tri-palm bull moose.
Yep.
So all the tri-palm bull moose get shot. They were common. I used to see lots of them.
Yep.
Now it's just like with a 3-point mule deer buck.
I was going to say, rewind the clock
just got
on the deer.
The 2, and they likely don't have 10. And so that bull's going to keep breeding because he's still a mature big bull moose.
Yep.
And he's going to keep passing that on. So you're going to have the wolf population is certainly going to rise again.
Yep.
Because it's not like wolves are easy to get.
Nope.
You know, they're incredibly smart, hard to hunt animals, and even trapping them, they are not easy to get.
No.
And we don't want to get rid of all of them, but they're not. It's not like you're going to go out and they're not strychnine poisoning wolves like they used to do in the 70s in places where but you were wiping out everything doing that too.
Yeah, you kill all the birds, you kill all
you're killing everything,
critters,
and that's
if
not
it moves,
good.
It's dying.
Yeah. So now with this, and it was like you said, it was a political. It was just like they hit a button. They're like, this will fix everything, and you're like, no, it isn't, because your counts. For example, if you're counting in the winter, well, we didn't see any in this area, because they don't winter there, because there's 18 feet of friggin' snow. They're actually down here. And how hard is it, do you think, to see from a helicopter the silhouette of the back of a moose standing by a spruce tree? How many moose do you think you're going to see?
Not a lot.
None.
No.
You know, or you might,
they're out
but
in the
you
fields
see,
and they're out
when
in
I surveyed and I flew around in choppers all the time, you'd see moose.
Yep.
And for sure, you'd see them once in a while, but you're only seeing the ones that were like in the open.
Mm-hmm.
And also only if you're looking for them.
Right.
I'm always looking for stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of people would be with me like, oh, do you see that bull moose down there? He hasn't lost his antlers. And they'd be like, what?
There's a moose?
There's a moose down there? How'd you see that? I'm like, well, he's standing there.
It's my wife and I on every road trip.
Heading
down to Vancouver, every field I'm looking like moose, deer, whitetail, muley. She's like, how did you see that? It's what we do. We look for them.
You're trained. You get trained and you don't even think about it, where you're always scoping and looking and you notice animals and you notice movement or, that flash or whatever it is. And it kind of, I think it's important to kind of keep that sharp because whether you're hunting or not, it's just spatial awareness of like what's around you. I think
you may see that bear.
Yeah,
you may see
you
that
might
bear
actually
that's
catch him
or whatever, right?
You know, like that Jeremy, like that. I read about it and I watched. I don't know how he's alive.
Oh.
That's insane, man. That guy got destroyed.
Yep.
And I'm like, holy, you're a tough bastard. Because man, oh man,
yep.
that bear, she came again and just like
mauled him 3 times.
Yeah. And just I can't believe it. Like the will to live, though. There's something to be said about that. So this is my little grizzly encounter.
Okay.
I had. So luckily I wasn't attacked. No one got hurt. Thankfully. So we went up to an unknown location. I just don't want to say it because I'm that guy.
Yeah.
I hate that guy, but I'm that guy.
That's every hunter that walks through the doors of this store.
I want you to earn it. If you're gonna go up,
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with you going there, but you gotta earn it. Like I did a lot of research. You talk to hear some stories. Like that was kind of what got it started. Was the stories of like this area.
Zipper Lip Creek.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
It's perfect.
I've been there.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So myself and a couple of my buddies, 3 other friends of mine, we're like, we're going to go to this. We looked on the map. We're like, we can drive pretty close and take the quads. We can set up our camp here, and we're just going to walk the river. We're just going to walk up and down the river. And we're going to fish. We're going to, and it was a year just like this, hot, dry. It was July 15th. That's also kind of why I wanted to come in here because it's very similar year.
Yeah, July 21st today.
But yeah, I mean, it's in that kind of zone when we were there.
Yeah.
And so we got up there, and first day we're looking and just beautiful. The water's low, crystal clear. I'm like, this is going to be amazing. So we get our camp set up kind of close to the river. And first day we start walking down the river, seeing grizzly tracks. Seen a couple of sets that were really big. And my buddies are like, they didn't have as much outdoor experience as I did for sure. Like even just looking at tracks and being able to tell the difference between this is a grizzly track, this is a black bear track, this is a wolf track, coyote, just being able, and even sometimes it's hard in the mud to tell.
Yep.
But these were certainly grizzly tracks because you could see, and we had talked about before we got there because I said, look, we're going into grizzly country here. That's probably all we're going to see. There might be black bears, but this is high elevation. This is grizzly country through and through.
Yeah.
So nobody's going to be a hero, John Wayne in it. If we see a bear, I'm the one who will make the decision on, do we? And I said the biggest thing is that if we see a grizzly, we're going to leave his space.
Yep.
We're not going to push him. We're not going to. It's not a black bear that crossed the creek in front of us because. Whatever, we'll just keep walking. And even then, that was still at that time when I was kind of like, worry about them.
Yeah.
And we all agreed, and I said, I'll make that call because I've been around bears and I've had, hunting experience, and they all agreed. And so we'd seen lots of grizzly tracks. And we go to these pools and we're catching bull trout, big, just one after another. Like it was the best fishing I've ever had in my life.
What creek?
Yeah, that's right. One of them I got was 22 pounds. Like it was a friggin' pig. And this was.
That all fishermen are liars except you and me.
You might give or take a couple pounds here and there. But I mean, holding my hand out like this and the tail, couldn't get my hands around. And it was fishing. Just slobbering his head over. Like it was a big female.
Yeah.
So they're charging up the river. That was the perfect timing, right? River was low. If there was a pool, you could just see them sitting in there like sharks.
Yeah.
And the poor little whitefish would try to get through and just get nailed, right? So we're fishing in there, and it's all single barbless hooks, so you got to really play it like it's tough because they'll grab it and they can throw it easy. Mm-hmm. But we caught, the first day, we were just catching 10, 12-pound bull trout like crazy. It was amazing. So we're on cloud 9, like we're just like, this place is better than we could have even imagined. And we only went like a kilometer down the river in the first 2 pools.
Wow.
We were just slaying them like it was nuts. And we probably caught the same one a couple times, but we just did go back in the pool and get back to camp that night. And we're good about keeping our camp clean. Excuse me. And food was locked in trucks, and because it was same. We had the discussion like, bear's gonna get in our cooler. He'll just eat all of our food.
Yeah.
And we kept everything. We had a little like burn pile just for garbage, like food garbage, things like that. We tried to keep scent down, everything. Set up the wall tent. Everything's great. Have a couple of wobbly pops that night, maybe a lot. And so in the morning, and I have a shotgun that I take for defense, semi-auto one. And the night before, I'd fallen in the river crossing it, thinking I was going to get to this other pool, dunked my shotgun, stood up, lost my shoes, poured it out, dried it all out that night, cleaned it, everything. It's good, but I slept with it beside me because I thought if something happened, I want it there.
Yeah.
And I always thought if I'm in a tent and a bear's trying to get at my head, I'm just going to boom. It just kind of gives you that little bit more. And I don't worry.
Peace of mind.
I don't think about bears are coming to attack me when I'm camping or sleeping on the ground. I've done it my whole life. And it's just one of those things. You just got to go to sleep because if it happens, it happens. There's nothing you can do.
Yep.
So in the morning, I hear my one friend, "Hey, there's a bear out here." And we're close to an old logging road. And I said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Is it a black bear?" "No, it's a grizzly bear." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then I start kind of hearing his voice. I'm like, "Oh." He's like, "It's coming into our camp." And I'm like, "Oh, whoa." So I jump up and I'm in my gaunch still. And I grab my shotgun and I come out there and I'm looking at him. I'm like, "Where is it?" He's like, "It's right there." I'm like, "Where?" And he points right there. And I look and I'm like, "Whoa, he's like 10 yards away." And he's up on this spruce log. Because I kind of looked past, because there was kind of a bit of a hillside there.
Yep.
And I was expecting to see him coming through there.
Right.
But he was already right there. Now, this wasn't a huge grizzly. I'd say a 4-year-old maybe. Okay. Something like that. Big enough. Oh, yeah. They killed us all, So I see him there and I yell as loud as I can, "Hey!" And he doesn't look. And like I said, this all seems like it took a long time to happen in my mind.
Everything
it happened so
down.
fast.
Yeah.
And my buddy starts walking to go get another shotgun that was sitting on a quad. And this bear is just watching him. And it's just tracking him as he's walking. And I yell again. And he's just fixated on him. And you can see his hair starting to come up. And I like, this bear is going to attack somebody. So I yelled again and nothing. And so he's standing right up on this big spruce log and the root wad's right beside him.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay. So I pump around so I'm just right there. Blows dirt all over the place. Well, he kind of just does this. Slowly gets down from the log. And he starts turning around. So then I'm like, oh, how are you not scared of that? So I grabbed the other shotgun and I'm like, we got to chase this guy out of here. So we start firing shots into the trees and then he takes off and he whips out of there really fast. But at first, when I was yelling at him and I had the bead of my shotgun pointed right here. Between his eyes. And because he was already too close at that point. I wouldn't have had time to do anything. And even then you think, So, but I'm so glad that I took the time to take that first shot as to scare him off.
Well, 10 yards is 2 lunges.
Oh, he would have, exactly. He just
you don't have time.
And
he makes a decision and he's on you.
And he left, and I'm so glad it did because I didn't want to have to shoot him. He was dumb. He's young. He probably got booted from his mom the year before. Yep. Maybe that was his first winter he had survived or whatever. Yep. And he ended up taking off. But afterwards, I came back and my buddies they're all just pale, just pale. And they're like, how are you calm? I'm like, I'm not calm. What part of calm? What do you mean I'm not calm? They're like, well, you just yelled at him and then shot beside him and chased him away. And I said, well, what else were we supposed to do?
It's either that or get eaten.
But it's so how fast. And we had talked about scenarios kind of like that. What are we going to do if this happens? Yeah. And they're like, why didn't you shoot it? I'm like, well, I didn't want to shoot it. And it wasn't at that point. It was, if he took another step, it would have had to happen. And that would have been really, and I know that reporting it, they would have understood that this is what happened. This was not a scenario where we had any other choice. He was going to kill somebody.
But on the other side, they go through the investigations are pretty intense.
I bet. And I'm sure they are.
I've had this discussion with 3 people off camera that have all been through grizzly bear shootings, that it's a guilty until proven innocent, and they go through and make sure everything is correct and what direction did the bullet go through and stuff. And we're still working on trying to get some COs in. I want to sit down and have discussions with them. They're very specific on what they can and can't talk about. They have to vet questions, and so I'm still working. And again, I'm not here to try and put anybody on the spot and catch them in no. It's just I want to sit down and have these discussions and hear their side as well. But
it's because it's so hard to prove. there's going to be people that see a grizzly 100 yards down the road and they flip out and they shoot it.
Yeah.
That happens.
Yeah.
And that's the side where it's like you didn't need to kill that bear.
Yeah.
And then you have guys that probably should have shot it because it was about to kill them and they didn't.
Yeah.
Those guys don't get props for not pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
Like I understand why they have to really dial into it, but I think it's not the right way to look at it because people generally aren't just killing them for no reason.
No.
I don't believe that for a second.
No.
Because if that was the case, there'd be less of them still.
Yeah.
There would be less. There is more. People aren't going out and just whacking grizzly bears. No. They're not. And if one's going to kill you, you know what? It's me or them.
Yeah.
Are you on team human or are you on team bear right now? Like, it's not about, it's life or death. And it's but a contentious issue because you can't, like you said, you're guilty.
Yep.
Right off the bat, you're guilty.
You killed that animal.
You killed that
out
animal.
Of season
you're
without
guilty.
a tag.
So now, are we creating an environment where it's shoot, shovel, and shut up now?
And a lot of that does happen.
Of course, because you get treated like a criminal.
Yep.
You know, you shoot a grizzly bear and they prove that you shouldn't have shot it. You do more hard time than somebody smashing windows and stealing shit out of people's cars.
Yeah.
Or houses or violent offenders who have like, oh yeah, that guy went to jail because he stabbed some people back in the day, but you know, he's okay now. Well, probably not.
I had an RCMP officer come in who, darn good guy, has been a customer for a long time.
Yeah.
Moved out of the Peace region, moved elsewhere.
Yeah.
And he's now dealing with a lot of violent crimes, we'll say, where he's at now, and homicides and that sort of thing. And he's a plainclothes officer.
Oh yeah.
And he said, the system is so messed up, as we all know.
It is.
The system is so backwards right now. But he said the only laws that have any teeth right now are animal offenses,
environmental laws.
Yeah, and environmental animal offenses, and motor vehicle violations. That's it. Everything else is
low hanging fruit.
Yeah,
you know, like it. I'm not like what happened. You know, I'd seen that. You know, you find somebody that stole from you, and they're, you know, you kind of feel half bad that people don't generally want to be degenerates.
Right.
You know, some people do. Some people are just okay with being crappy.
Yep.
It's nothing you can do. You know, and I mean, this isn't really about hunting, but with the system being broken, is that what are we doing? We're not setting up anything to help these people. There's nowhere for them to go. So now we just kind of let them go around and they're doing their thing because they are criminals, because they're trying to survive whatever it is, mental health, drug addiction. These are all big, big problems.
Yep.
But if you were to take these people, and rehab doesn't have to be sitting in a room talking about your problem. I don't know. I've never been to a rehab. I'm just, you know, projecting what you see on TV, whatever, right?
Yep.
But I feel like if you took some of these people and showed them, you know, this is, we're going out hunting, or we're going to survive in this place for 10 days with minimal food. We need to forage. We need to do, that might help a lot of people get through and like feel like maybe you serve a purpose. Like, oh, I could actually go out and do this.
Yep.
And the other side of it is that, now I'm talking now with violent offenders, let's bring back the chain gang. We should have these guys out working brutally hard and digging ditches and doing that stuff. Because if you're not going to get with the program and you're hurting innocent people, then you have to pay for it. Now, that doesn't mean sitting in a jail cell becoming more of a criminal and having to deal with all the terrible things that are happening in jail.
Yeah.
But if you got to work your ass off every day, that also might make you not want to do it again either.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's no one solution to it.
No.
That's not the case. But this revolving door
of
some of these guys have been in jail like dozens of times.
Yep.
That last year, that guy that stabbed all those people on his reserve was a known, very violent, bad guy.
Yeah.
And they knew it.
Yeah.
And he's just walking around. So to me, it's like letting a tiger out in a store. He might not attack anyone, but today, but he certainly will at some point.
When he gets hungry, someone's getting chewed.
Yeah.
And there is no simple fix, like you say, because
it's complicated.
When we talk mental health, drug addiction, what causes the drug addiction? A lot of times it's mental health or horrific circumstances or just a poor decision. It's huge.
We're
all one poor decision away from being in the same exact boat, 100%. Right? All of us.
Yeah.
And so I do have compassion. Of course. I've got friends who are going through it, who have been through it. Some that have come out, some that can't stay out. They come in, they come out, and it's you. Again, you look at the history. You look at what started it, what occurred early on in life for them. What did they go through? And there's always a story. There's always
it's never just I
wanted to get high one day, so I tried it.
I just figured I'd smoke some crack and see what happens. Like that's not a thing.
I hear it's good for your health.
Yeah, it makes you feel great. It's like you said, it's such a big issue that can't be solved in one night, one day. Like it's years, but they really aren't doing anything about it. They're padding it. Like it seems like we have all the money in the world for everything else. And I'm not going to say where we're sending a bunch of our money right now. And I'm not saying that they don't need help. But we have a country full of people that desperately need help.
Yeah.
And we're not helping them.
No.
Desperately in our own country need help.
And not to push politics one side or the other, but everything that's occurred, and it's happening all across Canada, but I'm going to focus nationwide. On Dawson Creek. It's also happening in the States.
Oh,
but if we focus on Dawson
that dumpster fire, we all know that things aren't going great. I hope the best for him. I don't want to see anything bad with that. That when I say that, it's just that like, come on, America, jeez,
get your act together.
Get your shit together. You're America.
Yeah.
Like act like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, the whole we've now built in Dawson Creek. We're in a northern community that gets really cold. Yeah. We don't really, up until recently, have a crazy homeless population year round. You get the odd transients in the summer.
Better be tough living out here in the streets. You better be.
We're talking Jeremy Evans Bear.
Oh yeah, we got Jeremiah Johnson there, playing the guitar out in front of the liquor store. Like you got to be tough to live here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as of now, we've built. Well, we've got safe injection sites. We've put up a lot more housing. We've put all these things into place to allow them to live here year round.
Yes.
And so it's brought a lot of crime. It's brought a lot of violence. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have housing for them and that sort of thing. But again, what are we doing to help them? Because it's not just they need a roof over their head and a meal, which they do need, but now let's get to the root of the problem. And the fact that you can't force someone into rehab is I mean...
They need to change that. I think that you can't, like, how is it fair for me as a tax-paying citizen? I'm not a criminal. I've never been a criminal. I don't plan on being a criminal, and where do I get safety? Why I thought I was paying for this so that I have, this is what I'm paying for.
Yeah.
And it's not there because, like you said, safe injection sites. The whole idea is to keep needles out of playgrounds, out of parks.
Yep.
That makes sense. It's not work. It works to an extent, I think, but you go to Kin Park and you also can find needles there.
Yeah.
I don't go there.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to take my kids to parks now.
Yeah.
And when I do, I walk the whole place. I look on the slides. I look anywhere because you never know. I know that's paranoid, but now it's a reality, and I just have to do it so that I feel better about it.
When there's guys sleeping in Kin Park in the middle of town,
that's just it.
And they're not just sleeping;
no,
they're high as a kite. They're passed out there.
And these are not. And when you're high like that, these people aren't thinking clearly.
Nope.
They're maybe not getting enough food. Like they have mental health. These can be maybe not, but they could very well be very dangerous very quickly if someone confronts them. But like you said, we're kind of encouraging them to continue instead of getting them out of it. Like we should be looking at, no, we got to get you out of this, man.
Yeah.
Let's get you on the plane. Let's get you out of here. Yeah. Now all we're doing is like, well, at least here's a place you can go smoke crack now.
Yep.
Here's a place to stay warm. Yeah, you don't want people to freeze to death. But when I was a kid, we had some kind of resident bums, I'll call them. That's rude, but some old rummies, some guys that you'd see around, and you'd see them lots, right? Yep. But they kind of just lived at the bar, stayed warm, they made it through.
When Corlane's was downtown, and I was working after school in
exactly,
grade 7,
the Windsor.
8, 9, 10, Mom would give me the deposit to walk to the bank, or I'd have to go down and pick up new printer supplies from the store down from Tiger Printing and Stationers, and so I walked that every day I worked. I was going to run around.
Never had
errands,
a thought about it,
and would always say hi to them.
Yeah,
and they'd always be friendly and cordial, and hey, have a good day.
These are just people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just they've made some poor choices, but they were harmless, and
And we also were on the tail end of a generation of a lot of guys that were in the big war. And guys that were in some real heavy battles. And you know, people that fought in World War II, we didn't know anything about PTSD. And even if they knew it was a thing, but it was kind of like, well, suck it up, princess, get back to work. You know? And, but it was a different time. And what those guys did and what those guys seen. Like, I have family members that fought in World War II, and a couple of them that aren't here, well, because they would be ancient by now, but took their life because they saw things that you can't ever forget or get over.
Yeah.
You know, and some people are, and it's not, and I don't think that makes you weak. I think it's, some of that was just like too much.
Yeah.
And there was no help. So there was a lot of people that were drunks because and we still see it with veterans where they're
numb the pain.
To numb that pain, and we expect them to go there and do that, and then they come back and we're like, oh, look at you, you're a mess. And it's like, you don't know what the horrible shit these guys went through or saw or have been part of. We have no, you know, my wife's grandfather fought in World War II, and he was in a brigade that at the end went and hunted Nazis down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like this guy was
he
a
American or
decorated
Canadian? Okay.
He was a decorated man.
Yeah.
And he never talked about the war.
Yeah.
He didn't even want to hardly say a word. Towards the end he did a little more, but you could tell it wasn't something he wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
So, but now, you know, those guys aren't really around anymore because that was so long ago.
Yeah.
But now it's like, have we lost our, like, it's like a blue healer. Do we just need something to do? Is that what's happening? Like, people just don't have enough anymore, and we got to find what that is again, because you can just sit on the internet and see the most magical whatever you want in front of you and live that reality.
You get the dopamine, you get the dopamine dump in a click.
You get the fix
as many times as you want.
As opposed to, like, you went out and planted corn all day.
Yep.
And you broke your back and you did it, but at least you had some food. You didn't have time to get mixed up in so much stuff. I mean, it's not like drug addiction and addiction's it's always been around ever since we started making booze and finding out what drugs made you high or plants made you high, whatever.
Yeah.
But I just, it's very strange when I drive down, you know, I drove past the Orion and I looked and there's just people on the street that were really like doing the old zombie pose, like they were wrecked. And my kids are looking, and my daughter asked me, what's wrong with those people? And part of me wants to be like, well, they're degenerate drug addict losers that are here and they're defecating on our streets and breaking our businesses and causing damage. But at the same time, it's like, but I don't want to show that hardness because they've not experienced that yet. So I say, well, these people have serious problems and they need help.
Yep.
I think that's all I can say. You know,
I would fully agree that that's all we can do and we have to show compassion.
Yeah.
And we have to teach our youth, and you and I both have quite young kids.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it for them.
No.
I'll explain what's happening and just keep it very simple and talk about it with compassion. And that's kind of all we can do, and let them know that these people need help and hopefully they get it.
And that's what you, I guess, maybe hope for the next generation, is that if you can show tolerance, but solution, you can't just let everybody do whatever they want. Yeah. There has to be consequences, there has to be things, but also you have to show that, like, these are still people. Yep. We should help them, but, you know, something has to happen too. Like, we can't just have, I'd never seen any crime like this ever in my life until the last few years. Yep. Where it seemed like it skyrocketed.
Oh, it has. I mean, even just here in Corlane's, I mean, I got a damn good staff in the building. There's 25 of us here at any given time. Yeah. Gunsmiths, IT, front end staff. There's a lot of us here, and so I mean, when people that just seem a little bit sketchy come into the building, we provide them with amazing customer service. Oh yeah, yeah. What can I help you with today? And I mean, we treat them with dignity and with respect. Yes. Some of them end up buying products, some do not, but I don't need more product walking out the door unpaid for, because that happens. I mean, when we do year end and look at our losses, it's a staggering number of product that does go missing. I won't throw it out there, but every year it's a little different, and we see it go up every now and then. And as of right now, without looking at year end numbers, over the last couple of years, the amount, well, I'm going to say over the last 2 weeks, we're normally between 4 and 6 p.m. at the end of the day, normally between 5 and 6 actually, right before closing, we will have people coming in every day that we have to be watching.
Right.
And we have to keep a close eye on, and I mean, some of them are well known.
Right.
And I mean, there's social media. We know who's
That's
who.
one thing about social media is now to spread something, it's like that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we're aware of some of these individuals, but I'm not going to say it's every day, but it sure is way more rampant than it used to be.
Oh, it's, you know, like I seen the vigilante group in Dawson. I don't know who these people are, and I'm not going to... So this guy that was an alleged child predator, the father side of me is like, yeah, you should have thrown him in the creek too. Yeah. You know, because it's like, if you're an alleged, you've done something. You don't just get told, like someone doesn't just randomly come up and be like, oh yeah, by the way, that guy's a pedophile. No, this guy did something. They kicked him out of Grand Prairie, and then it blows up in the speculation of what's this, and so this guy got beat up and whatever happened.
Pepper sprayed, beat with a pipe, and then driven over by the sounds of it by a vigilante group.
Is this guy, so say this guy is a pedophile, then he deserved that, in my mind. Like, maybe this will be the thing that, like, he's never going to do it again. Maybe that's his one chance. Because that's what people used to do.
Yep.
You know, back in the day when someone had a touchy uncle, they took him out somewhere and beat the living shit out of him. And they didn't do it again. And if they did, well, maybe, well, where'd Uncle go? I don't know. They must have moved. You know, just an example. Like,
right.
It's just...
Yeah.
But it's also like, these guys got to be careful, because if you kill somebody, you've committed manslaughter now. Now you're a criminal.
Yep.
These are not... I don't think that these are bad guys doing this. And I understand, because we don't have enough RCMP. Mm-hmm. They're tied up with rampant drug use and just that. And so you have people with pride that want to take care and protect their properties, protect their kids, and they're doing something. And not all we see is things like Marvel movies, all these things about being a hero, going out and protecting, and that's great. But beating people and pepper spraying them isn't right, and it's not wrong. You know, depending on what it is, because if you legitimately knew, or especially if you knew this guy did that, it'd be really hard not to.
Yeah.
You know, but I just worry for these guys. It's just like, make sure you know, don't. I just would hate to see some guys that are just really trying to do the right thing get thrown in jail for something that really was an accident.
And I would say, when I first read that, and again, it was all over Facebook for how many days of him being followed within the Peace region.
Oh,
boom, boom, boom. He was in another spot. Someone was posting, here's his picture. He's on this hill. And when he got attacked, somebody had just posted, his car is parked here and he's walking. And so, I mean, like, it was he couldn't hide from it, being in the Peace region. And the father in me would fully agree, like, if that was my kid, I would lose my mind over it, right?
Yeah.
On the flip side,
better hope I don't find you.
Well, but on the flip side, what if it's an accusation without any...
That's exactly...
Like, exactly. What if I'm a pissed off ex-wife, and I just post on Facebook, hey, my ex-husband
is a pedophile. And that happens. It does happen.
Or he just walked into a yard for whatever other... Maybe he was trying to steal something and there were kids out playing. Maybe he was... Who knows? But there's a lot of what-ifs.
That's exactly.
If he wasn't... Then guilty, then holy
like, that's
crap.
terrible. Yeah, that's horrible. This poor guy. It's just like
a homeless guy living in his car. And so I look at both sides, and I'm like, man,
exactly.
If I understand both sides, and
but that's what makes it tough. Is like you said, this guy might have done nothing wrong in his life other than some poor decisions on finance, whatever it is, and he's living in his car. And I saw that car one day, and I thought, holy man, why would someone spray paint that car? Like what happened there? And it's because somebody had wrote that, but like you said,
he spray painted over it.
Yeah,
with
so maybe a pissed off ex-wife or husband or whatever it was could very easily make that accusation, and then it just gets. Then the sharks come in on social media and they blood in the water, and then it starts spreading. So that's not right either.
Yeah.
So for these guys, you just be careful.
Yeah.
Whoever you are, you know what I respect, and I think that you're doing a great service to try to protect the community, but be careful.
Yeah, I've just gone through it in the last week as well. With
yeah, I see that.
Wife's car got rummaged through, and so I wanted to know who it was. I found his picture on my cameras.
Fast too.
And within 12 hours, I had some words with him. Yeah. And then within another 12 hours, had more words with him.
Yeah.
Because he took off running after the first set of words I had with him. All non-violent. My goal was not to be to elevate it beyond that, because again, that wasn't the purpose. But I don't want him back in my yard, or my community, or my neighborhood.
Just needs to understand that, like, don't come around here.
Everyone's watching.
Because that guy's life clearly sucks already.
Yep.
So punching him in the face, it might make you feel good for a bit, but at the end of the it's not going to changing anything. No. You just have a sore fist now.
Yeah. And when he said, I can't tell you what I took because I don't know, because I hit a bunch of vehicles because I had a debt to pay. And the guy that I owed money to is one bad dude, and I had to pay him. Yeah. And I said, did he do that to your face? Because he had a 2.5
I saw the picture
here. And he said, yep. I said, I get it. And so when he's like, well, what do I owe you? And I said, nothing, because I don't know what you took. Because he just rooted through her car. There was change. There was all kinds of stuff strewn about. But it was I said, I don't need you stealing from someone else to pay a debt to me.
No.
Period.
No.
I said, don't ever step foot in my yard again, though. I don't want to see you on my cameras. And I left it at that.
Yeah.
And I've seen him twice today. Ran down to Tim Hortons to grab a quick bite of lunch, and he's sitting on the curb out front.
But the biggest thing is what is, like, with a lot of these groups and these guys, is I'm starting to recognize some of them more. Mm-hmm. And I'm very guilty of driving by these guys when they're on their bikes and stuff in my truck and just staring them down. Yeah. Like that, just so that and it's not because I think I'm tough and I'm just like trying to scare these guys. What I want them to get from that is the people are watching you, and I know who you are. Yeah. And I'm going to, people need that, and that's going to help with that problem. Luckily where I've been, I did have my wallet stolen once. I didn't lock the vehicle one night. I don't normally have to. I always do. Yeah. And one night I didn't, and that's the night, and they stole my wallet. Well, they went down to Husky and tapped as much they could. $95, I got my money back, and we got the surveillance, and you could kind of grainily see why is it that, like, security cameras don't see anything, but like a GoPro that's this big can film in like 4K.
Yeah. Like every security system has you filming with a potato. That's it. Here, we're selling you 26 potatoes to put around your property. That's what you're filming with. Just
it doesn't seem to so you couldn't really see who it was, and the cops like, well, you're not gonna get your wallet back. Yeah. Thanks, Sherlock. Yeah. I figured that. And it's not their fault. Like, the RCMP are spread thin, and there's like Grand Prairie was talking about getting local police.
Yep.
I think that's a great idea, because then that alleviates a lot of pressure from the RCMP.
But the citizens have to pay for it. And so how much do your taxes go?
Exactly.
And there's always give and a take.
For sure.
We need more, but
city like Calgary, they've got their own police.
Edmonton.
They can, though, because they're big enough. The machine is big enough to support it.
Yep.
And it's good.
I look at Dawson Creek and the amount of taxes we pay, and it's like, how much more do we put on, right? But that's a different discussion.
Well, the last time I looked at my assessment, I thought, boy, I don't see the Okanagan Lake around here, or any nice bodies of water.
Yeah.
And it's the sewer infrastructure, and I know they're doing repairs and upgrades. I won't go down this rabbit hole too much, but what we're paying for taxes, we are getting jack shit.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Mm-hmm. I have a shitty old sidewalk still that was there probably from the 80s or before. They did up to this point, but decided not to do down my street. And you're like, why? Just do the whole block.
You're still by our old place up around the corner?
Up on 17th there?
92nd.
Yeah, for sure.
Not to give away exact locations.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Up in that area somewhere.
41628 on 90.
That's right.
But I lived 2 blocks south of there.
Right.
And when I bought that place as my first place, I paid $7,500 the year after I bought it to repave that street. Then my wife we were dating at the time, bought the house right by you.
Oh, yeah.
And we moved up there. Then they paved that street. So we paid $7,500 that year to pave that for our
Yeah,
for that one. And then when we moved into our house now, well, our street's okay, but now they've changed the tax, the way the system works, that we don't have to pay, you don't have to pay anymore for it. Now we all pay higher taxes. I'm like, damn it, we're paying to pave all of Dawson Creek now.
Well, and I'm not a politician. I don't know to crunch the numbers on what they're using. And to me, though, I guess is like our city is barely big enough to be a city.
Right.
And we've got a lot of amenities that are really great.
Yep.
You know, and that's fine, but we're not big enough, we're not expanding enough and like to have some of these things, so we kind of have to work with what we got.
Yeah, and we're what, 12 to 14,000 people,
and it hasn't hardly freaking changed in like 30 years. It's been like kind of the same.
Yeah.
But you know, like everybody's mad about the splash park, and I get it, because it is better than nothing.
Yep.
And I know that, like, it seems like what had happened was that probably some of the pipes didn't get drained and they broke and it was a big mess and they couldn't use them again. But then they couldn't get anyone to be there to monitor it. And it's like, well, in Fort St. John, it's a button and the kids play. It's a splash park.
Yeah.
No, you know, I know when they had Rotary Lake there, and what happened to that girl is awful. It's devastating.
And for everybody that doesn't know, that's listening, that might not be a Dawson Creek local. We had a swimming pool on the outskirts of town, an outdoor pool that I remember fondly as a kid going to all the time throughout the summer to go swimming in an outdoor pool that was, let's say, chlorinated or brominated. I don't know what they used.
Yeah, it was treated.
But it was a treated outdoor pool.
There's a lot of pee in there. It would have been worse.
That's what kept things. Killed off everything that ever got in there.
That's
there's two types of kids in the world: those that pee in the pool and those that lie about peeing in the pool.
Yeah.
100%. But I don't. 8 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah, it was a few now.
A young girl got stuck in the water intake system and got held under and drowned.
She got her foot caught or something had happened, and I mean, like,
bolts had been pulled out of the grate or something, and something had opened up, and she got stuck in there, and people tried to pull her out, and they weren't successful.
It's horrible.
Absolutely horrific. It just terrifies me as a parent.
I couldn't imagine the terror, the feeling, like, it just make you sick.
Yeah.
Now, and this is not...
So they filled it in.
Yeah.
So after that, it got drained, it got shut down, it got filled in 2 years ago. And a local resident, Kelly Svensson, put her feet to the ground, did a ton of fundraising, worked with Brown Social House. She was working for Brown's at the time, I think. And did a ton of fundraising and, I don't know, $100,000, something like that, to build a spray park down at this location. Then the infrastructure wasn't there to actually pump the water through it properly, so they dismantled it and put in some pipes that missed.
Yes.
So now there's a pad with a few mist pipes and a button that you push.
Everybody fondly refers to them as the piss sticks. But they think, maybe that's just me. I think it's hilarious but you know what? It works. The kids went down there. You know, I'm not going to not use it. It'll go cool off, whatever. But I guess because I'm a Dawson Creek native, I've been born and raised here. Fort St. John's kicking our ass. They are very, in every way. Yeah. They've got, like, there's 20,000 people, though, I think, in Fort St. John.
Yeah, they're bigger than we are, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
But their last mayor they had and things, like, they really pushed for a lot of these kinds of things. You know, as much as I hate to say it, like, you know where our old pool used to be?
Yep.
That would be a really good spot, in my mind, for a splash park.
I've always said that.
Yeah, you know, that's just space that's not being utilized. And is our aquatic center, the Ken Borick, if that's leeching money out of our city to do city things, then we can't have it. Like, I'm not sure how that works, but I can't imagine that the amount of people using the Encana Center is paying to keep the lights on in the Encana Center.
Yeah, I don't have
any
any
And the amount of money that they're even getting from Ovintiv, I can't imagine. Like, that place probably just in natural gas to burn electricity a month is probably $30,000.
Yeah.
You know. And
it's not going to be cheap. It's a big building.
So I'd like to see it utilized more.
Yeah.
You know, like, and we're also coming off the pandemic.
Yep.
Things are
Everything was
changed
shut down.
a lot.
Yep.
And a lot of people stayed kind of mole people and stayed inside, and they've realized that, well, we don't really have to go anywhere.
Yeah.
For me, it was just like, you're not going to keep me trapped forever. You know, I mean, it was a bad time, but it was harder on my children than it was me.
Yeah.
That's the part that bothers me, is that it was my kids that suffered, not me.
My boy was born 2 days into it. And
my
so
son was a year old when this happened.
His entire life. So we got out of the hospital the day that they locked the hospitals down, basically. And so his entire first 2 years of life was masked people. Not around a lot of people. Not like it was just, it was definitely
My
different.
son, for a while, he kept going like this and like opening his eyes really wide when he was talking. And I'm like, wonder why he's doing that. And then I realized, because of people wearing a mask, all you see is their eyes moving when you're talking.
Yep.
It was heartbreaking because it's like,
I was so happy my kids weren't in kindergarten or in school.
Oh yeah, that would have been
that
bad.
Was going down.
That was
5-year-olds were forced to wear the masks in kindergarten.
It was so hard to explain to my little kids, and like, you got to wear the mask, and and the way I explained it was like, this is to like try to, if you got a cold or something, you don't want to be sneezing, because this can really hurt like grandpa,
Yep.
My grandpa's 82 years old. It could have very, very easily.
Yep.
So it was a respect thing for elderly people, as I kind of looked at it in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
But that changed everything so much. And I think we're starting to kind of climb out of it, but it was a strange thing. But with the city, like I said, I think Dober is doing a good job. I don't think he seems like a great guy. I don't know him personally. I've met him a few times, like he talked to him back before. And it's not just on him. This situation.
No, he's the face, right? That's right. When I think of the president, when I think of the mayor, when I think of a premier or whatever, they're the face of the organization. The organization is making decisions.
The ones that get shit on, really, at the end of the day. But when we're maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but do we have too much of an old boys club going on in our council to where we're not moving forward on some things that are like, we got a co-op, but we need another splash park, okay? Like that's kind of what I kind of feel like. It's like, well,
bring back the co-op cafeteria.
Well, exactly. Yeah, they'll put all the money in the world. I know it was great. I remember as a kid, but and I shouldn't get too far into that because everybody's trying to do their job the best they can. Yep. I'm not saying that that's the case, but are we looking at it as like, people are proud of Dawson being a certain way, and I get that. But we also have to understand that like things do need to change a little bit and move forward to make things better at the end, right? Yeah. If we stay in the same...
Without progression, things will stagnate and die.
Yes, and then because look at all the buildings in the last few years that have burnt down.
Yeah.
And there's nothing, and there's no infrastructure of any sort to like, we've got these gaps.
When we had Corlane's in the downtown core, Brenda, Rod, and Tim owned the building we were in.
Yeah.
And that included the 4 buildings beside it. Small little... There was a
I remember
shop
when you guys expanded next door, and I was just like, this is amazing.
Yeah,
the store is that much
we filled the Napa store, right? Because it's Corlane's and Napa, and we filled the Napa side. But then there was a deli, there was a hairdresser shop, and I don't remember what the other one was.
Griffin's down there.
Well, but Griffin's was no longer their building. That was the next building.
Oh, right.
So there's now an empty park there.
Oh, I see, yes.
That was the Potbelly Deli, and it caught fire, and it burned down. Right. And that was part of their building. And so when that burned down, it's like, okay, well, insurance will pay to rebuild. But to build a brand new building there, their taxes on that would have been worth more than you could rent it out for. And so it's, again, this is a broken system. I've now been talking with some other people. They were asking me, they wanted me to run for council this year. My wife convinced me out of it, and I'm kind of happy she did, but I'd like to have more of a voice and play more of a role.
I would certainly back you on council. Yeah, you should.
But I'm talking to people now that are trying to... There's big vacant lots downtown where things have burnt down, and you can't afford to build on it because of what your taxes will be based on per square foot. And this is something we could have Darcy in, and we could talk about this and let hear from the city side.
So, like, what's the like old Wildcat Video burnt down? So we have a lot of... We're getting more and more spaces where it's like, but what are we going to put here? Like, it has to be something that, like, is it viable? Is it going to be something that we need? Are we going to utilize it?
Yeah.
I love seeing the fact that, like Post and Row.
Yeah.
Seeing amazing. A local company like that.
Yep.
They're doing great in the Roadhouse. Like, that's amazing. Yep. Like, good for them. Well, and I want that, and that's, like, supporting local.
Yep.
That's exactly what that is. Like, and it's great.
And it's bringing people back to the downtown core. And
yes.
When we go out to Nova Scotia to visit my sister, we'll go downtown Halifax, and there's one street in particular, I don't remember what it's called, but they've actually shut it down to the road, so all the businesses have expanded out onto the road.
Nice.
So there's a walking trail down the middle,
right?
But they've all got patios out front. They've all got a draw to go hang out down there.
That's amazing.
So you think about all the vacant lots downtown Dawson, and again, it's a fine line because you can't leave them out because they become new injection sites and new hangouts and stuff like that. So I mean, you have to be able to put it all out during the day, pull it in during the night or something like that. But I mean, I love the concept of let's bring people back downtown. Let's get a farmer's market going downtown. Let's utilize some of these vacant lots to and the city should be able to sell something for $1 or just give a tax break if you're willing to bring something in, and I don't care what it is, but something to draw people. And we have so many tourists come through here. How do we get them to actually want to hang out in the downtown core and stay for
because you're right, they could close it down and like have the mile zero post, that whole little section
as a walking area.
Now there's places like Lawrence's where people are like, that place gets used all the time, and for but you could do it, because what always amazed me was the amount of people coming the Alaska Highway. Like when I was 14, 15, I worked at the Co-op gas bar where the old location was. Back in the day, pumping gas. It was a great job. As a teenager, it was fantastic. You talked to tons of Americans that were coming through. I always found it so funny that, lots of times when they're going up, they're just like, yeah, we're just heading to Alaska. And they kind of made it sound like it was like a hop, skip, and a jump for them. Like, oh yeah, we're going to go drive to Alaska.
We're at mile zero now. It's like, close.
Oh, well, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
And then when they'd come back, they're all like, we had to drive through Canada a long time, and you're like, did you guys not look at the map?
There was no Google Earth back
even
then.
In movies, they always show like, we're going to Alaska, and they're in the lower 48, and they're like, Alaska. You drove through a country that's almost twice as big as the lower, like, as you take British Columbia and overlay it on the United States. It takes up a California, Washington, Oregon, Nevada, parts of Mexico. Like, it's huge. And then you're still driving through the Yukon. So you got it's a huge country. Yeah. But we get a lot because the Alaska Highway is an incredible feat. That's why I get real pissy when I see streets torn up for 3 months. And I'm like, boys, they built the Alaska Highway in 9 fucking months. With old shitty cable dozers and horseback and come on.
Yeah.
I know it was the military.
Yeah.
But still, that was, can you imagine I was thinking going through the Sickanee.
Oh man!
Just in particular, just for whatever reason, I always think when I drive through there, I'm like, good lord.
The cuts that they had to do, the corduroying of wood, but cutting all the trees down, putting that down because it's it's loon shit as a base.
It's all slippery clay and there's just.
And so they drop all the trees, lay them down, gravel on top, bury a couple cats because you couldn't get them out of there. They're now
stuck
part
there
of the,
forever.
Yeah. And we have a section of street torn up for 2 years.
No, I know that everybody's got to do their thing and it takes time. And I know, especially working in a city, there's so much that can go wrong so fast when you're digging and exposing old pipe. And some of the old piping we have was put in by the American military that we're still using as water lines.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they got to be real careful, and I get that. But sometimes I'm just like, come on, guys, And I don't know. I went way too far down the rabbit hole. My bitching about the city. I love Dawson Creek. I really do, and I'm not saying I have all the answers, because that's not what I'm going to claim. But it just seems like lately things aren't going the way I would like with the amount I'm paying to stay in the city. What's keeping me here? That's the question that council to me should say. What's keeping people in Dawson Creek? Because you know what? A lot of people, if they get the opportunity, what are they going to do? They're going to move out of town. Mm-hmm. A lot of people want to live in the outdoors.
Yep.
But also, if it was way cheaper and you had more, or you paid a lot of tax but you got a lot back, then it's worth it. What keeps you here? What resources, what amenities are we getting that's extra?
Yep. Good question.
And at this point, there's not really much keeping me. I want to move out of town just because I like being out in the country, because I like to be able to take a leak wherever I like, shoot guns off at whatever time I feel necessary. it's one of those things where if I want to go target practice at 8 o'clock at night, so what?
My running joke is I want to move to a piece of property big enough that I can walk naked to my hot tub, shoot guns from the hot tub, and have nobody complain about either.
You know what? I shot a moose in my underwear, and I'll tell you, it was riveting.
I bet.
And I feel like I get what you're saying. Shooting something naked, I feel like is like
from the hot tub.
Yeah, from the hot tub.
I was thinking just targets, but I mean, you could take that down.
You know what? You get some elk coming through, something like that. Call them in, sitting up there. Yeah, it's for me. It's because of the outdoors, and it's not like we're far.
No,
it takes 5 minutes if you want to be out of town. And
I've shot a deer from within 7 minutes of the mile zero post.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like that bear.
Legally.
Well, yeah. He was a ways, but I got him. Yeah. Those ladies that got mauled by that black bear last year up on Bear Mountain.
Yep.
Like that was nuts. Those ladies are tough. Like they were getting chewed on. That was crazy. What happened?
And then the son punched the bear, beat the bear. He got chewed up.
Oh yeah, because that bear was. He was eating them, like that was his kill. Like, and then that's that predatory black bear thing.
He was laying on top of one of them. When the cops heard, help
Think about that whole cop seeing that. That's horrific.
The cops are looking at blood on the ground, and they're walking, looking for it, and then they just hear, help me. And a woman's laying underneath the bear. They shine the light over, and its eyes and ears go boom, and it kind of does one of these, and then the cop puts it down. Like, amazing what that officer did, because he'd gone out of his way to go pick up his own side by side.
That's what I'd heard.
I don't remember if he was off duty or what it was.
But he whipped up there very quick, which is probably the only reason that they were alive, is the fact that he got there and shot that bear when he did.
Yeah.
Now, the thing about that area, and I'm not making light of this, but where I was talking about it, and they said, there's a bear attack up on Bear Mountain, and I said, well, they call it that. Not because it's shaped like a bear, right? There's a lot of bear. There's just a lot of black bears in general. Probably, I would say, I don't know for sure, but I would say British Columbia probably has the densest population of black bears anywhere in the world, other than maybe Alaska.
Right. Yeah.
And we could argue that like we're touching so much with Alaska and BC. It's like, well, are those our bears or your bears?
Yeah. There's a lot of bears in this neck of the woods.
Yeah, there's lots, and so. That happening was crazy, but what I think led up to it was the fact that that bear had become habituated. Maybe not necessarily with food, but just with seeing people all the time. Mm-hmm. And what I can't get over is how many people go running and jogging on these trails, listening to music, running through the forest,
pray,
not able to hear anything.
Yeah,
and to me, I'm just like, that's insane. You should be able to hear... Because you might hear that bear crashing through the bush. Mm-hmm. Or that cow moose that thinks you're too close to its calf and comes and stomps you to death.
we were up there the day before those ladies got mauled, doing a little quad and bicycle ride that my uncle bought a couple e-bikes, and so we're testing them out for the first time. Nice. So we had a side-by-side with our kids, like 4 of us in the side-by-side, and they were both on their e-bikes to go put 10K on, and then we traded, so we got to test out these e-bikes, and so we went up and cruised along the wind towers there. And there was 7 different vehicles parked of people having a picnic. I think that was on Saturday, and they got mauled on Sunday. All these families parked out there having picnics, people hiking down over the cliffs. The rimrock's there, and I mean, I don't think there was a gun on the property. I didn't see anyone with packing heat, so it had become such an attraction for the locals to go kill a Saturday or kill a Sunday and have some fun out there and go out. And they had the food on the tailgate. There was all these vehicles. At every pullout, there was a different group kind of thing. So no, it was well known and no attacks. But just like shark attacks, there could be people in the water every day off the coast of California. And when you get up in a the sharks are there. They're circling all around them.
Some just giant tiger shark that's just beetling along there. And you're like, the ocean is full of monsters.
It scares living daylights out of me.
I have the physique. I feel like I would look like a seal from the surface. So fuck that. I'm not. I'll go in you know what? I'd go in a cage to see a great white. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah.
But somewhere tropical, I'm not I don't know. There's some things where I'm like, I'll take my grizzly bears.
Yeah.
You know,
hopefully
you might
get
see,
to
them
coming. Yeah, exactly. A shark, you have no idea.
Yeah. So it's, but you know, that habituation that's happening, and I think people forget because of Instagram, because of like, and it's great that people want to get out and go hiking and do all these things, and be active. That's great because the outdoors, I love it. I get it. But they're forgetting that it is still nature because people are going out that don't know what they're looking at. Like they walk by a pile of bear shit as big as your head that's still green. And that bear is 10 feet from you and you don't know he's there. For me, I'd see that and be like, ooh, there's a bear. There's a big bear right close. And you're going to think about it and take those precautions. A lot of people aren't going to think about it. They don't maybe know that there's Saskatoons for 3 miles along where you're walking.
Yeah.
And there's bears everywhere. Now, bears eating berries are probably not going to worry about you because they're getting their food.
Unless you're taking their berries.
That's right.
Which, I was going to jump into this one with your first bear story.
Yeah.
We went back into, again, your dad's old stomping grounds where he used to guide.
Yeah.
Back in Silver Sands where you were sledding. And I don't know how many kilometers we were down there. We got to a spot where quite a ways in, and we found some berries, and I'm talking not 2 or 3. You just sit down and you keep eating till you're full. And there was like 6 of us, huckleberries, and we're just sitting there, just filling our faces with huckleberries. So but we wheeled into this spot, picked a bunch of berries, and we had to stop. Like we didn't go there to go berry pick, and we're quadding, and so we fill our faces there, go back to the quads, and there's a grizzly bear, just I don't know, 40, 50 yards from us, and it's just walking in the other direction, and like you said with you set off your predator call, and that seemed to have flipped a switch.
Oh, it did. 100%.
And so I picked a blade of grass, and I do this all the time when I see bears now, when I'm a safe distance away.
Squeaked at 'em.
And I just started, wah, 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 and I just go hard on it. And I just blow it as fast and as hard as I can, just nonstop.
Yep.
And that sucker, when we all came out and somebody fired their quad up, it started to run away. And I said, shut it off. And I started doing that, and it stopped. Spun around, and it started coming. It didn't just stop and look. It stopped, and it went from running away to, I'm on it.
Yeah.
He's stalking us now.
Oh, yeah.
And he was coming back. And then again, fired the bike up, and, I got to get out of here. And he took off, and then I just blew it again, and he spun around. Now we're talking he's 150 to 200 yards away, so I feel comfortable playing with him. But he's just, it flipped a switch in his brain.
Oh, yeah.
There's a squealing mouse, rabbit, whatever, over there, and they're like, predator.
Yeah. They turn, and then that's where I'd not experienced that with bears before. I'd never even thought about it.
Yeah.
It was watching some show, and somebody was, talked about using predator calls for hunting bears. I think it was somewhere in the States.
Oh, okay.
And they were doing it, and they talked about how it worked really well.
Yeah. It'll bring him in.
And I thought, like, well, yeah, I guess. I mean, why not? Like a squealing moose calf, like they're predators still. Like they're, and so it's funny. So after that happened, I thought to myself, because I kind of had some nightmares for a couple days where I just kept seeing the look on that bear's face.
Yeah.
Just its beady little eyes.
Yeah. Just
staring at me. And I was just, so I had, but I'm like, I'm not going to not go back out. Yeah. Like that's not going to stop me.
No.
It was my fault. 100%. I was not prepared for what I had done. I flipped a switch that I didn't know what was going to happen, right? And that was an experience. It was also being bolder than I should have been, and I'm just lucky that, because if I would have tripped, that bear would have mauled me in front of my wife.
On your own porch.
On my porch.
Yeah.
And
she wouldn't have had a gun to quickly.
No.
It would have been too late by the time she dug it out.
Yeah, so I go out a couple weeks later with my dad, and he wants to see it. He's like, I've never done it either. He's like, I want to see a black bear, how they react to it. And I'm still a little bit post-PTSD, but I'm like, no, this is a good way to get over this, because they're not monsters. Right. They're just animals, and I made that mistake.
Yeah.
So we go out, we go down, we get on this old pipeline, and we stop and kind of peek over, and oh yeah, there's a black bear. He's feasting on clover right there. And he's 150 yards away, but he's laying down, and he's not looking at us. He has no idea we're there. So we traipse up to about 80 yards and stop. And Dad's like, hit that call. And I'm just like, you hit the call. I said, I'm going to have my rifle. So I had my 7mm 8, and I had it ready. And so he hits the call, and that bear jumped up, turned around, and just started coming towards us. Not like on a dead run, but on like, I would say an animal that's spring loading.
Yeah.
They're winding
ready.
up, getting ready to jump on something and kill it.
Yeah.
And we had to step out. He got up to about 30, 40 yards, and we stepped out of the where we were hiding and stopped him. And he still stood there. And we walked backwards all the way back to the rhino.
Yeah.
And he stood there the entire time staring us down like I was having some salad and you guys fucked with me and you're not even anything I can eat. Like, he looked mad.
Yeah.
But it just, like you said.
Well, it's an easy meal.
Yeah.
A wounded animal is an easy meal.
Absolutely.
And it's a good meal.
Yeah.
So,
so it did get me over it. I'm glad it happened. At the time, I felt like my heart was going to explode. But it was also good because I didn't want to be scared.
Yeah.
You know, I'm always thinking that about bears in the sense that they're there.
Yep.
They can always be there. Keep your wits about you. It's the sights, the smells. Like, I find during hunting that I really focus on everything but nothing. Like, I'm really just trying to just really listen really well. Stop, listen. Something smells weird.
We all need to unplug and reconnect with nature. We need to be balanced. We need to be brought back because we are so caught up in technology, digital. You've always got a screen on. Like, we as a human species need to unplug. And absolutely. Get out there and touch the ground. Like, go barefoot, walk around barefoot. Like, I don't care what it is. We need to reconnect.
And edibles that you can find, like berries, we pick morel mushrooms in the spring and things like that, and getting that kind of connection back to it. But, you get to where you start being able to smell, and you're like, oh yeah, there's definitely a bull moose somewhere around here. Or you find a wallow or whatever it is. But,
or a bear kill.
Or a bear. That's what I'm trying to smell all the time.
A mound.
Is rotten.
Yep. Rotten meat.
Rotten. And that's, as soon as I pick it up. Now in the fall, some of those, what are those mushrooms called that we have? Like the Vikings took them, where they went on their crazy raid and they all took those mushrooms. They fought naked. Do you ever hear about that? Like, it's some kind of crazy mushroom.
But I want to look it up now.
But it's an hallucinogen, but it's also a poison. Like, it's a very, but they rot. And so you can smell them sometimes and you'll get that waft and you're like,
what's here?
You're like, no.
Mushrooms. Yeah.
But, so that reminded me because of this one spot. So I went with one of my friends out elk hunting one evening, and it was a good area. I know there's elk there. Sun's going, it's getting lower. We had about 40 minutes of light, and I'm like, we can walk in here in 10 minutes. Let's get in here. Let's call hard down into this draw where there's this creek. So I call a few times. I get an elk answer, but he answers once, and then he doesn't say anything, and I'm kind of humming and hawing. I'm like, well, do I go after him? It's always like, or is he coming towards me? And that time he was coming. And he busted me hard and gone. And there was he's not coming back. But we started working our way out. It's getting darker. And I thought, you know what? We got to this old fence line. I'm like, I'm going to call down in the bottom because he maybe is trying to come back around. You never know. And so I call and nothing. And all of a sudden a wolf howls. So close it felt like it was rattling me. Woo, like it just lights up. And then another one and another one. And I look at my buddy and I'm like, those wolves are close, man. And we start walking out. And you can hear them running around. You can, they're 30, 40 feet. But it's all thick, older. Yeah. And it's getting dark.
Yeah.
And you can hear them yipping and talking to each other. And howling. And, you could hear them running through the trees. You could hear the
Yep.
And so we're walking and he's like, wolves don't attack people. I'm like, not usually. But I'm like, he thinks we're an elk. Well, I'm like, they probably don't think we're an elk at this point.
Right.
But they came in thinking we were.
Yeah.
And a predator is still a predator. I'm like, the likelihood of getting attacked by wolves, it hardly ever happens. I'm like, but let's not be a statistic.
Yeah.
So we keep walking and we're picking up the pace, but I'm like, let's just, because I'm not worried about it, because I've grown up here and I've never really thought about wolves as being an animal that's going to attack me. Right. But when that was happening, I definitely was a little bit, I'm like, let's pick up the pace and get out of here. But I'm like, we can't run, because if somebody started running and fell, in that scenario, that really could trigger something.
Yeah. Running, again, your prey.
Your prey.
The moment you run with a predator, they go into predator mode and you're prey.
Yeah, we both have our rifles. We get out of there. We get kind of into it kind of breaks out of the trees and into an opening, and there's an old, like a fire trail that had been pushed in there, and the quads are, another 50 meters from there. And as soon as we get to that opening, it was like they were escorting us out of there because they stopped. But they started howling and howling and howling. And we sat there on those quads. They probably howled for 20 minutes. And it was just amazing. It was haunting because you could hear, like, there's one really deep. And I would say there was probably 5 to 6 of them there. And that's the pack that's always kind of run west of where I grew up there.
Yep.
There's always been a pack. They've never gotten too big or too small. They've always kind of been around, it seems like, and they stay on that side of the creek. I think there's a couple of different ones. But it was, you don't get to experience that very often.
No. Nope.
And it was amazing.
No kidding.
Scary.
Yeah.
Kind of, too, but it was also, that's where you keep your wits about you, because as soon as you panic, you never know.
We had that happen with, I was a kid. I would have been 10. My sister was 12, and my parents, and we went out behind. We had mom and dad had, 7 acres out in the country, and we had permission on land behind us, and we had hiked out there, and I think we were just chasing deer at that time, and it started to get dark, and we got caught. We were back there a little too long.
Yeah.
And coyotes did the exact same thing to us. They were all around us. You could hear them. You could hear them yipping. You could hear them running. And it was basically loaded guns and walking out as a family. Me, the little one, over here, just a tasty little fat morsel at 10 years old.
That's the thing with coyotes, too, is like they're attacking people in cities because they're smart. Yeah. I would say that a coyote is probably smarter than a wolf. In some, and maybe smarter is not the right. I would say they're more adaptable.
Yeah.
They are very quick to change to whatever they need to survive.
Yeah.
When the world ends, there's going to be cockroaches, coyotes, and politicians left. And they'll all be fighting for that biscuit left. And so, but it's still, that can be terrifying. And it really should make you feel like there's a reason we're leaving. Because it's when people get people getting gored by bison in Yellowstone. I shouldn't laugh. But they think it's like a zoo.
Yeah.
These tourists come in there and they go up to a 1,500-pound bull bison, and they are ornery critters.
Yep.
Nobody's ever been like, bison are just so wonderful.
Can't wait to get one as a pet.
Oh, yeah.
They're great. Love them.
Smart and just love you. They want to stomp the shit out of you.
Yep.
And people are, and same thing with bears in these parks.
Yep.
And what really bothers me is that you have some tourist, approach a sow grizzly with cubs, and they get attacked by that sow.
She gets put down.
Yeah. No. In my mind, this wasn't like a bear came into a camp and drugged somebody out of their tent and ate them.
Right.
This was a mother bear protecting its babies, the most natural thing of all animals.
Yeah.
Protecting our young.
Yeah. From an influencer who wants a selfie.
Well, yeah. So, that's not fair.
No.
That poor, I'm not saying that was okay they got attacked, but you did that.
Right.
So, if anything, you should be punished for it and fined, as opposed to shooting that bear.
Right.
Like, she's just being a bear.
That's what
you're
they
being
do.
a retard. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say that word. She shouldn't be
Canceled.
A dummy. Yeah. Sorry, it's just, you know what I mean. Don't
First
be
and last podcast.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Shouldn't be a dummy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Jeez Louise, I don't know why I said that. But I mean, it is. It's just so moronic to do it.
Yep.
And
every video I see, I'm like, well, they deserved it. Those bison ones blow my... And the bear ones.
Yeah.
Guys feeding them, guys trying to just take a picture
I
of them.
love the Russian ones because it's always Russia. You're like, you want to see something insane? And they'll be just like, and they're just like feeding these bears and stuff, and you're like, oh, somebody's going to die. Yeah. For sure.
They all have one as a pet.
Did you ever see that video of these Russian guys they must have been gold mining or something, and they're in like their tent, and their dog keeps chasing this like grizzly cub down the bank, and this grizzly cub keeps coming up, and the dog and the cub are kind of almost playing, like they're not being really too aggressive, but then the cub's getting mad and he's kind of doing little bluff charges, and they're laughing away, and all of a sudden the dog comes back, and then the sow comes up on the bank, and she is a big sow. And the video is her just running into the tent, and then it ends. So I don't know if those guys died. Yeah. They probably did. Yeah. Or they got destroyed.
Yeah.
But it was just like, you see the cub, and like it's a big dog, and the cub wasn't small.
Yeah.
about the size of the dog, like it probably a Malamute looking kind of dog. When that sow stepped up, you're just like, oh, she's big.
She meant business.
And she looked and was just like, nah. So yeah, it's people play around, and I just hate to see animals getting put down when it's someone else's fault for something like that.
Well, and you know, I'll go back to Jeremy, and not to keep bringing it back to him, but after his grizzly attack, everyone's like, oh, did you go back out and try and put it on that? He's like, no, I was in its backyard.
Yeah.
It did what it does. It's a bear. That's what you expect them to do.
I have a lot of respect for that guy, because, you know, a lot of people would get the, like, you know, let's get our torches and our pitchforks and let's go hunt down Frankenstein.
Yeah. Robbie Austin was the same, actually, because after his mauling, after all his rehab and he could walk again and stuff, his next hunt was actually a grizzly bear hunt with a buddy who had a tag, and they got charged. He was stalked by a black bear on that one, and another
That's
crazy.
pretty scary.
Yeah. But again, he's like, I didn't go on a grizzly bear hunt to kill a grizzly bear. My buddy asked, do you want to come along on this hunt? Like, and he's like, yeah, I got to get back out into the bush, so I'll come along.
Yeah.
And they're looking at grizzlies on a hillside, 3 of them in a bowl, and a black bear had been through their camp, destroyed their camp, had their scent, and it was following the scent. And so it's walking towards them at just a standard pace, but not looking at them. It's looking left, looking right, looking left, looking right. And it's just keep walking straight towards them. And so they get up on a log, take a shot, fall off the log, and it picks up its pace. And it keeps and they had to put it down. Like, it was... Robbie, not the best guy to go chase bears with by the sounds of it, but
sounds like he's a bit of a bear magnet. That's like my one buddy. Like, this is just funny. Like, goes back to just kind of messing with bears too. And that's as dumb as it, because it was dumb. When you grow up around some things, you kind of get comfortable.
Yep.
We were way up working up the OJ, and this guy we were working with wanted a picture of a bear. And we're like, oh, it's a spring. Like, we'll see lots.
Yeah.
So here's this one little 2-year-old black bear, you know, just booted from his mom, little scruffy bugger. And he's down off the bank of the road. He's on this log, or he's below this log. He's kind of standing there, and he keeps kind of looking up at us. And we're whistling at him and yelling, trying to get him to just look, because the guy just wanted to get a picture of the bear looking at him. My buddy's like, I'll get his attention. Hums a rock, and it was just like it had eyes, and it beamed that bear on the top of the head. It wasn't a big rock. That bear turned around, and he got up on that log, and all of his hair stood up on his back. And it looked like a cat. It is the best way I can describe it. He started like reaching forward like this, coming up the log, like a cougar in my mind.
Yeah.
And the guy's just like, holy shit! And we all jump back in the truck, and we're kind of laughing about it. And then I think, like, man, that bear could have once again, it's just, you shouldn't be messing with wildlife.
Yeah.
You know? It's just that what it comes down to.
Yep.
Or be prepared if you are going to start things in motion, like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You know, but...
On that note, there is one thing I want to wrap up with, and it's going to be a bit of a shameless plug for your family. Your dad has a bit of a company that I want to kind of throw out there, a new business venture that he put out there, and I kind of want to talk about that, and it's White Fang Antler Chews. I think it's a good spot to end.
It's great.
If you have a dog or know someone that has a dog, you should get out and pick up some White Fang Antler Chews that are antlers that have naturally fallen off moose, elk, deer, that employs locals to cut them up and package them and distribute and sell them at quite a few stores locally. And they're excellent priced, 3 different sizes, and they are local. Support local. Yeah. And if you're not local, and still support local in Dawson Creek.
Well, and I mean, the thing is with them too is like, dogs love them.
Yep.
They do. It's not just plugging for it. Like, we've had dogs, they've always chewed on antlers. Now, my dad is very passionate about going and finding them.
Yep.
You might even say crazy about it. Intense. But he just loves being out.
Yep.
And if there's a guy that can go find them, he's the guy. And that's just it. These are naturally shed. They're just going to get chewed on. What do you find when you find an old moose antler? They're chewed by squirrels, porcupines, mice. Everything chews them because it's tons of calcium.
Yep.
And you might as well. They're just going to lay there.
They're going to rot.
And it takes a lot of effort, and you're hiking in and finding these antlers and doing all this. And I'm really proud of him. I'm glad he's got that going, because I'm like, it's something you love doing.
Yeah.
You know,
he gets so excited. I think he's the only guy in my contact list that texts me pictures of antlers on the ground.
Oh yeah.
He's like, look at this one, look at this one, I found this one, look at, and so yeah, I always get antler pictures from him. But
you're lucky you're not getting. So we send pictures of bear shit to each other all the time. That's our thing is I like to, in the spring you find a big pile.
Yep.
He loves to put reference. He had the dog lay by one to show me scale. He's like, look how big that pile is next to Bella. I'm just like, oh my God, that's a huge pile, right? And I'll send him pictures of my boot beside one, and it's just kind of one of those things because both him and my dad isn't a bear hunter in the sense that he doesn't kill bears. But he is definitely a bear hunter. He just loves to go see bears and be around it.
Yeah.
And it's great, but talk about like sending these pictures and trying to judge bears by the size of their shit, I think is a legitimate thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just for fun. And it's a weird thing, so why not?
White Fang Antler Chews. Matt, are they online? Do we have them on our website? We have them here at Corlane's, all different sizes, small, medium, large. If they're not online now, they will be by tomorrow. So Corlanes.com, check out White Fang Antler Chews. And I also want to thank you, Roman, for coming in and sitting down to have this BS session. It was great.
Yeah.
And we didn't know where it was going to go, and it went everywhere.
It went a little, definitely.
We went politics, we went outdoors. And from that, I'll say, with the Dawson Creek discussion, a lot of cool points came up worth pursuing. And I'd like to get Darcy Dober in to sit down and have a discussion. And
I almost said a word that's really bad that I didn't mean to. But jeez, like of all things, oh my goodness. Hopefully I won't get canceled. Well, I can't be canceled if I got nothing.
There you go. There you go. So, just want to thank our sponsors, Ballistics Custom Turrets, ballistics.ca, and the most accurate, precise, and affordable long-range target solutions you can get your hands on. Thank you all for tuning in, and have a great day.